My name is Rachel, and I'm 37 years old. I'm happily married to my wonderful husband, Paul. We live a peaceful and happy life with our two children, our son Andrew, who is 8, and our daughter Emma, who is 5. Paul and I first met in our college cafeteria. We were both having coffee and reading books when we started talking. That simple chat turned into a strong and special connection. Paul was always calm and kind. He would listen to me with so much care, and I felt safe and comfortable with him. Over time, we became close friends, and I realized I couldn't imagine my life without him. One day, under some beautiful blooming trees, Paul shyly gave me a ring and said, "I want to be with you forever." His words were so honest and sweet. I nodded yes with tears in my eyes. Since the day we got married, we've shared true happiness together. When our son Andrew was born, Paul cried with joy and softly said, "He's our treasure." Andrew is full of energy and loves being outside. We go on family picnics every weekend, and watching him run around makes me feel so happy and proud. A little while later, Emma was born. She was fragile and had a health condition from birth. At first, we were very worried, but Paul and I worked together and promised to support her through every challenge. Andrew, her big brother, loves her so much. He always says, "I will protect Emma." Seeing their love for each other brings me so much joy. There's one more person who means a lot to me, my grandmother, Kathleen. She is full of kindness and grace, and I've admired her since I was a little girl. My mother, Emily, divorced my father when I was young. When I was still very young, my mom got divorced and quickly married a man named Brian. They had a daughter together, my half-sister Betty. As my mom focused more on her new family, I started to feel left out. My mom and stepdad gave Betty lots of love and attention, but I often felt ignored. On family shopping trips, Betty would get new shoes, while I was told, "The ones you have are still good." It made me feel like I didn't matter as much. But my grandmother Kathleen always made me feel special. She gave me warm hugs and would say, "Rachel, you are my precious granddaughter." When I felt sad or lonely, I always found comfort at her house. The love I hoped to get from my mom, I often found in my grandma instead. Her home was like a safe place for my heart. Even during big life moments like my wedding and when I had my children, my mom, stepdad, and Betty didn't show much interest. It felt like they came to my wedding just because they had to, not because they wanted to celebrate with me. My mom didn't say anything about my dress or the plans I made, which left me feeling invisible on what should have been a happy day. When my son Andrew was born, my mom still seemed to care more about Betty. She brought Betty to the hospital right after I gave birth, but didn't show much excitement about meeting her new grandson. Betty asked about the baby, but she didn't seem truly interested, just curious, like it didn't really matter to her. I wanted so badly for my mom to see my child with love and pride, but her attention stayed on Betty. I felt lonely and left out, even around my own family. It was like my mom, Brian, and Betty were their own little group, and I didn't belong in it, no matter how much I loved and supported them. It took me a long time to accept this. I thought about it over and over again, trying to make sense of it, but I never really could. In time, I started to step back and look at my family from a different point of view. But through all of this, my grandmother Kathleen stayed by my side. She was truly happy for me. When I told my grandmother Kathleen that I was getting married, she cried happy tears and said, "Congratulations, you made a wonderful choice." Her words touched my heart so deeply, I almost cried too. I could feel how much she truly wanted me to be happy, and her kindness stayed with me. When I introduced Paul to her for the first time, she welcomed him with warmth. She noticed he was a little nervous, so she held his hand and gently said, "Please take good care of Rachel. I'm counting on you." Paul smiled shyly and thanked her with real feeling. In that moment, I could feel how much she loved me and how much trust she was placing in Paul. When Andrew and Emma were born, her joy was beyond anything I expected. She loved them deeply. When Andrew took his first steps, Kathleen cried happy tears and cheered, "Look, he can walk now." Whenever Emma smiled, Kathleen was amazed. She would often say, Emma is starting to look like her mama. To my kids, she wasn't just a great grandmother. She was a constant source of love and comfort. Kathleen loved Wellington, and her house was full of bright Wellington paintings and decorations, making every room feel peaceful and warm. After my grandfather passed away, she chose to live on her own, holding on to their memories. She used the money he left her to buy a small house in Wellington, a special place full of their shared memories. The cottage sat right by the beach, calm and beautiful. After I got married, I often took my family there to visit Kathleen. She loved to cook, and her lemon pie was the best I've ever tasted. Some of my favorite memories are of us standing together in the kitchen, surrounded by the sweet smell of sugar and butter. Paul loved the peaceful feeling there too. He would smile and say, "This place feels like heaven." Andrew would run happily along the beach, and Emma loved sitting on Kathleen's lap, listening to her magical stories. Kathleen's love for my family was so clear in everything she did. One day, she told me, "I plan to leave this cottage to you." My heart filled with joy. That house held so many beautiful memories, and I hope to create even more happy moments there with my own children. But those peaceful, happy days began to fade when Kathleen became seriously ill. I gave all my time and energy to taking care of Kathleen, but at the same time, looking after Emma's health was very hard. I didn't know it then, but while I was going through all of this, my mom Emily and my stepdad Brian pretended to care about Kathleen, while secretly planning to take her property for themselves. Losing Kathleen broke my heart. But what shocked me even more was what I learned from her will. Kathleen had left me not only the cottage in Wellington, but also a large amount of money. When I found out, I cried so hard. I felt like I could hear her gentle voice saying, "Rachel, the cottage and everything else is for you and your family." But my mom and stepdad didn't agree. They were angry and said it wasn't fair that I inherited everything. They kept pushing me to give the cottage to Kathleen's brother, Jeffrey. I wanted to say no, but I was completely worn out, both in body and mind, from taking care of Emma and trying to manage her medical bills. I didn't have the strength to fight back. So, against my wishes, I gave in. I handed the keys to Jeffrey and said quietly, "We'll handle the paperwork later, once things calm down." Losing the cottage, a place so full of love and memories, hurt deeply. But I forced myself to focus on Emma. With my husband and kids beside me, I still felt like I had enough happiness in my life. But a few weeks after Kathleen passed, something terrible happened. There had been warnings about a hurricane coming, but no one expected it to be so strong. The storm was much worse than anyone thought. Heavy rain and floods hit our town hard. That day, I stayed home with Emma. She was still very fragile, and I didn't want to risk taking her out in the bad weather. Meanwhile, Paul and Andrew went to a nearby store to buy supplies. Even though the streets were starting to flood, Paul smiled and said, "We'll be back soon," and Andrew added happily, "I'll get snacks Emma likes." They waved goodbye. I had no idea those would be the last words I'd ever hear from them. On their way home, they tried to cross a road that had flooded. Suddenly, a strong wave of water swept their car away. I saw the news and felt like my heart stopped. I didn't want to believe it. I rushed to the police station, begging them to find Paul and Andrew. After hours of waiting and praying, an officer looked at me with sadness and said, "I'm sorry. Paul and Andrew were taken by the floodwaters." My world fell apart. The pain was more than I could bear. I cried like I never had before. Emma was crying too, but I told myself I had to stay strong for her. Even though my heart was breaking, I had to take care of everything, like planning the funeral. I chose the date called Friends and Family and started getting ready to say goodbye to Paul and Andrew. During all of this, I called my mom to tell her what happened. After a short pause, she replied with no emotion, "That's unfortunate. When is the funeral?" "Next Sunday," I said. "I can't come," she answered. "Why not?" I asked. "I have a trip to Wellington planned. You know Betty lost her job and broke up with her boyfriend, right? Brian and I are taking her on a vacation to cheer her up. It's already booked and hard to cancel now." I was shocked. She was choosing a vacation over the funeral of her son-in-law and grandson. Mom, are you serious? I asked, my voice shaking. Rachel, we can't just change our plans. Betty is looking forward to this trip, she said. Family died. Paul and Andrew are gone. And you're going on vacation? Don't overreact, Rachel. I understand you're upset, but we have our plans. I couldn't say another word. My heart sank. She had chosen a trip for Betty over being there for me at one of the hardest times of my life. I ended the call, feeling completely alone and betrayed. My mom had always favored Betty, but I never thought she could be this cold. On the day of the funeral, I did my best not to cry. I gently placed Paul's and Andrew's favorite flowers on their caskets, saying a silent goodbye. Many people came, including Paul's friends and family, and that gave me a small bit of comfort. Even my father, who I hadn't seen in years, and his side of the family showed up. Their presence and kind words helped ease the pain just a little. But my mom, stepdad, and Betty weren't there. I knew they were already at the airport. I could picture them sitting in the lounge, laughing and waiting for their flight, acting like nothing had happened. The thought made me so angry, I could barely stand it. It was heartless and unforgivable. I was drowning in grief from losing Paul and Andrew, and now I also felt a deep anger building inside me. After the funeral, I decided to check the security cameras at the Wellington cottage. When I saw them there, walking around casually like everything was fine, I knew what I had to do. I was determined not to let them get away with how they treated me. I called the police and reported them for trespassing at the cottage. Soon after, they were forced to leave. When the police arrived and asked them to leave, they were completely shocked. They tried to argue, saying the cottage was supposed to belong to my grandmother's brother, Jeffrey. But the officers already knew I was the legal owner, and I hadn't given them permission to stay there. My family was surprised and confused. In the end, they had no choice but to stay in a nearby hotel. Not long after they were removed, my mother called me, furious. "What have you done, Rachel? Why would you do something like this?" she shouted. I was stunned by her anger and couldn't believe she had the nerve to be upset. Once again, she was only thinking of herself. "I don't understand why this is considered trespassing," she went on. "We're family. It shouldn't be a problem for us to visit. That cottage is supposed to be Jeffrey's anyway." Hearing her say that made my heart grow cold. All the pain and betrayal from the past came rushing back. She kept defending herself, acting like they had done nothing wrong. She never once apologized. "Mom, please calm down and listen," I said, trying to stay calm. "When you entered that cottage, the legal paperwork hadn't been finished. That means the cottage was still mine. I didn't know that. I can't believe you would accuse your own family of trespassing. Do you know how expensive this hotel is?" she snapped. I stayed strong. "If we were truly family, you would have gone to the funeral of your son-in-law and grandson. That should have been your priority. But you didn't show up. I don't consider people who ignore something that important as family." For a moment, she had nothing to say. I took that chance to let out everything I had been holding in. "I don't consider you my family anymore," I said clearly, and I ended the call. Later, I heard that my mom, stepdad, and Betty ended their vacation early and flew home. They had probably planned to stay at the cottage for a few more days, but now they had to spend money on hotel rooms instead. Honestly, it felt fair. After everything they had done, they finally had to deal with some consequences. Even after returning home, my mother kept blaming me for everything. Despite how she had ignored my pain and acted selfishly, she kept sending me angry messages saying, "You really did something awful by turning on your own family." I chose to ignore her messages. Over time, her words stopped having any effect on me. My heart had completely shut off from them. Paul had always been the main person earning money in our family. He made sure we lived a comfortable life. For years, I had sent money to my parents, especially because my mom often asked for help and my stepdad sometimes demanded it. Deep down, I never felt I had to help them. It just felt like it was expected of me. But after losing Paul and Andrew, and especially after my mom chose not to attend the funeral, my feelings toward her changed completely. Her choice to go on a vacation instead of being there to mourn with us was something I couldn't forgive. I felt deeply betrayed, and my heart turned cold toward her. Because of that, I decided to stop sending them money. The next month, when my mom realized the money wasn't coming anymore, she called me in a panic. Every time the phone rang, I felt uneasy, but I stayed calm. "Why haven't you sent the money?"
"What's going on?" she asked.
I took a deep breath and answered quietly but firmly, "I'm not sending you any more money." There was a long silence, and then she started yelling. "Why would you do this? You know we depend on your support. How are we supposed to live without it?" Her voice was full of fear and anger, but I knew I was making the right choice. I felt sure of myself, even as she shouted. "I'm done helping," I said. "You didn't even come to the funeral. I don't see any reason to keep supporting people who chose a trip to Wellington over mourning my husband and son." She was furious. "You're so cold. How can you say something so cruel? You have no heart," she shouted. But I didn't feel anything anymore. Her words no longer touched me. "That's fine," I said. "I don't think there's anything more to say." Then I ended the call for the last time. I stood by my decision to cut all ties with them. After that, my mother and stepfather, who had been living off my financial support along with their pensions, had to survive on just their pensions. According to relatives, Betty still hadn't found a new job after being fired and was still living at home. Money was tight. They even had trouble paying for basic things like electricity and water. The family that once went out to eat often was now eating simple, cheap meals. My mother sighed as she picked out discounted groceries, and my stepfather struggled to find a job because of his age. The happy, busy home they once had turned quiet and heavy. But I didn't feel sorry for them. I didn't feel responsible for fixing their problems anymore. My peace of mind became my top priority. Soon, their behavior became more desperate. They started coming to my house without warning, begging for money. When I refused, they would yell and cause trouble. I was scared of their surprise visits, so I changed my locks and installed security cameras. Every time the doorbell rang, I felt nervous. I often pretended I wasn't home. I didn't feel safe in my own house. Every small sound at night made me anxious, and I began losing sleep. One day, my mother tried to sneak into my house again. I called the police right away. When they arrived, she was arrested on the spot. That incident gave her a criminal record. Both my mother and stepfather lost the trust of others. With criminal records, they couldn't get jobs or take out bank loans. Without income, their financial problems got worse. Even with all of that happening, I didn't feel any sympathy. My heart was completely closed off to them. All I could do was watch quietly as they faced the results of their choices. When people heard that my mother and stepfather had skipped my husband's and son's funeral to go on a vacation, they were shocked. Relatives talked about it, and many criticized them. They became distant from others, losing the support of both family and friends. My mother tried to apologize several times, but it didn't matter. My heart stayed cold. I had no plans to accept my mother's apologies. I chose to look ahead instead of thinking about all the pain I had been through. I promised myself that I would no longer sacrifice my own well-being just to meet my family's expectations. Most importantly, I had someone special to protect, Emma. Knowing how strong she was, I knew I had to be strong for her too. Cutting ties with my family and stopping the financial support felt like the right choice. I was ready to let go of the past. My connection to my mother, stepfather, and stepsister no longer meant anything to me. In my heart, those relationships were over. I had given too much for too long, and now it was time to choose myself. From that day forward, I decided to stand on my own. Emma and I moved into the cottage in Wellington. In a room filled with warm sunshine and a peaceful view of the sea, we began a new chapter of our lives. Little by little, Emma began to get stronger. As I cared for her, I also started to find hope again. Being free from my family and all the pain they caused made me feel light and free. Even though I had cried a lot, those tears now felt like part of healing, not pain. Sometimes, as Emma and I walked along the beach, I would think about everything we had gone through. Our hard journey made me appreciate our new life even more. As Emma smiled again and found her own strength, I saw that we were both healing. Since choosing to live bravely, our lives became calmer and more peaceful. I could feel a new future slowly opening up for us. Letting go of my family helped me find myself again. My bond with Emma grew stronger, and I started to enjoy life once more. In those moments, I felt truly thankful for the decision I had made to leave the past behind. I looked forward to a future full of freedom and new beginnings. Feeling proud of how far I had come, I promised myself to keep moving forward, one steady step at a time.